She's April.
And she's Molly.
And we are
the Book Besties.
They were labeled the two handsome bachelors. I mean, you can buy a penis, right, in a store. It comes in plastic and you can wash it and, all the things with those. It is terrible, and everybody should have it burned into their memories because that's amazing.
Meet my energy.
I went with ASMR
like that.
Went with ASMR to screw with you today.
Don't come in like that. No.
So we're not gonna, without spoiling too much for the besties, because they're gonna have to see it on our socials.
Yeah.
We did the same book and the same audio for bench reels for next couple of weeks.
Oh my gosh. How did we do that? We didn't even plan it. We
didn't even discuss it.
I made it today right before we came on, and I was like, Molly, you have to go listen to this, watch this reel that I just made, and yeah.
I heard the sound, and I no makeup, no hair, my hair was dirty. Yeah. I heard the sound, and I was like, I need to use this and make it.
Yeah.
And that's just so funny.
We're having a lot of fun with our social media. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram.
We've been having fun with the reels.
Yeah.
And the TikTokers.
I'm not personally on TikTok. I am on Instagram. Not sponsored. Hashtag not sponsored on any of that.
No, for sure.
But I really have fun making the reels.
They're fun.
It's fun.
It's fun.
It's fun.
I like it. So
can I just tell you really quickly that I am 40 years old.
We all know this. Yes, this is community knowledge.
I am 40 years old, and my husband gave me a hickey. And when I said to him,
Thomas!
You realize you gave me a hickey, he said, you're welcome. And I said, am I? I teach middle school.
Who is this for, Tom? Really?
Right.
Who is this for?
I mean, it could be worse. He could have peed in a circle to mark his territory around me. So this could be worse.
But who are you? Who are we preventing? Are the 13-year-olds coming hard? Are they really coming at it? Do you have an influx of admirers at school all of a sudden? Teen boys are weird. You never know.
Lord, I hope not.
So, this week's book.
Yes.
Another Molly pick. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I can't say the word husbands anymore.
By Taylor Jenkins Reid.
That's a mouthful.
And this is all over the social media right now. So if you're on social media, you've probably seen it. That's, I think, probably how I knew about it.
Same.
I saw
it.
I saw it in a bookstore, and I was in the bookstore with my friend Megan, and it was the same time that I saw The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and both of them just screamed Megan and Molly books to me. But I actually have read a previous book by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is Daisy Jones and the Six.
How is it? How was it?
It's a fantastic audiobook. So it's meant to be an oral history.
Interesting.
An oral history project of a fictional band called Daisy Jones and the Six. And there's a great plot twist in it. I can't imagine actually reading that book because it is an oral history, so I feel like you need the voices.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, but the audiobook was fantastic, and it has it has an A-list cast. There are people in there that you would know from movies and things.
That's awesome.
So
I liked the audiobook of this. So I enjoyed the audiobook.
I did the audiobook for it as well. I did have a physical copy that I checked out from the library. It had a huge wait list. I didn't think I was going to get it in time for me to actually look through it, because I wanted to look through it to see what the format was.
What's really interesting, how they did the news articles, and the husbands.
And you absolutely, if you read this as an audiobook, and Molly's right, the narrators in the audiobook are pretty good. So if you read this as an audiobook, do yourself a favor and just look at a physical copy of it so that you can see.
Go on Amazon and skim through the e-pages.
Yeah.
Because here, this is halfway through the book or so, 160-ish. They have the actual news articles written.
Right. And they're all, of course, they're fictional, but so I did get the book from the library.
It is loosely fictional, and we're going to talk about that.
Well, I did get the physical book from the library. I had to return it because, again, it had a huge wait list because this book is wildly popular right now. And so that's what we're talking about today for our second historical fiction for the month of March.
I love you. I'm writing a question I just thought of.
I'm honestly still running on a high from last week where we interviewed Francesca Zappia.
Oh, yeah. Chessie.
I mean, incredible. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, go listen. She's our first author to be on the pod.
She's coming back. She's already told us that.
Yeah, and that wasn't just like blowing smoke. After we filmed, she was like,
we talked for 30 plus minutes.
I really do want to come on again. Yeah,
we all had like things to do, including Chessie herself, and we just instead of doing the things that all three of us were required to do, we talked because, we're friends now. She's a book bestie.
we've deemed her an honorary bestie for sure. She's great. My shirt says Raised by Libraries. Isn't that adorable?
It is. It's pretty. I like that color on you too. It's pretty.
Thank you. I love blues on me.
Would you like my synopsis?
Oh my gosh, I would so much like it.
So, we meet Monique. Oh my God, why do I call her Monica?
Not
we meet
Monica.
Monique. No. We meet Monique as she gets the assignment of a lifetime, an interview with the one and only Evelyn Hugo. Evelyn hasn't done an interview in years, and she's requested Monique specifically. When Monique arrives, she gets way more than she bargained for. Evelyn does not want to be in the magazine. Instead, she wants Monique to write her life story and publish it after her, Evelyn Hugo's, death. In telling of her story, we learn way more about Evelyn than we ever expected.
Yeah.
I
don't know what to expect because
you did an awesome breakdown of the husbands.
Yeah.
Could you just give their names as they're broken? Like, would you do me the favor of reading them off? Because the way Evelyn describes each husband really talks about who they were to her and how she sees them.
Right. So,
in the long run.
And each of these sections of the story is essentially 7 parts, right? So it's 7 parts because it's 7 husbands. So the first is Poor Ernie Diaz, which is her first husband. Molly, I don't say this word.
Okay, you want me to say it? Let me get to it.
It's G.D. Don Adler.
Okay, there you go. That works.
Gullible Mick Riva, Clever Rex North, Brilliant, Kind-Hearted, Tortured, Harry Cameron.
Oh, Harry.
Disappointing Max Gerard.
Facts!
Agreeable Robert Jameson.
Yep.
And that is the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
So let's get into these questions. So this is the one you hated the least, if I recall.
It is the one of the 3 historical fiction books that you made me read this month that I hated the least.
That's a start. I'm going to take it.
Does it mean I liked it? No. It does not mean I liked it.
There are so many places we could start with this, but I want to start with the writing. What did you think of the breakdown of the different voices as we went along? We have media clips, we get Evelyn's point of view and Monique's point of view. How did you feel about this?
So that's why I needed to see the physical book, but I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think that the media clips were necessary to this story.
I think it's a nice ad for the physical book.
I don't think it's necessary. I think what she's trying to do is what she did with Daisy Jones and the Six, which is make it more of like, this is a real story. Mm-hmm. But we all know this is fiction. Like, honestly, when I was listening to Daisy Jones...
Fiction adjacent.
Right. Well, the same with Daisy Jones and the Six, which kind of similar... It resembles several bands of the 70s. But when I was reading that book, I had to actually stop and think to myself, is this a real band? Because I didn't think it was. And like which it isn't, but there's actually a song in that book that you can listen to. Like they created the song, like for real, like in real life, you can listen to it. So I think what she was doing was pushing that too hard. I don't think that those were necessary.
You think she was piggybacking off of the style she created for the first one, hoping it would build an audience? I mean, people really love this book.
But this isn't an oral history like that one was. And so I don't feel like it was as relevant. I also don't feel like it was as relevant to have the two stories parallel each other. Like, I understand the purpose of that because I'm not going to spoil the ending yet. We will spoil the ending later.
Get there. Yeah, we always do.
But I understand why she had Monique's story and Evelyn's story parallel each other. But I think it would have just been a better book if we just read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and we didn't have Monique's story at all.
So I like this, and I'm going to defend the opposite. So
what a surprise.
I felt they were more like Monique is slowly learning about her. And I feel like the clips are part of Monique's research, right? We're not getting, after she spends her day, because she's spending her days with Evelyn, and Evelyn kind of gives her a husband a day as we go, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just Monique goes home, she sits down, and she starts doing research, and she finds these clips. And I just feel like they're just a portion of her research, and I feel like it helps you understand Monique more than it helps you understand Evelyn.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong in what you're saying, that is the purpose of including the clips, but I still don't think they were necessary.
Oh, I enjoyed it. But I love historical fiction, so I like that added detail.
But she's building a history here that she could have just built through the story and not needing to world build more.
Right.
Like, it doesn't need world building. It's not a fantasy novel. Like, you don't need to build the world.
Right. She wants us to know this fake version of Hollywood, which, babe, you didn't stretch too far. That was pretty realistic on how these people were.
Right.
But I because of the surprise twist, I liked having both storylines, especially with the growth you get from Monique, and I feel like even Evelyn grows as she's telling her story.
I don't agree with that. I think Evelyn is who Evelyn is from the time that she walks up to Ernie Diaz, and propositions him to marriage so she can go to Hollywood. She is the same person then that she is at the end of the book.
I don't know. I feel like to be at the end of
I kept picturing her. She's far more glamorous than this woman, but I kept picturing her looking like B. Arthur in the days, in like the Golden Girl days. And I mean, that's not to say B. Arthur wasn't glamorous, but she had more of a masculine style. And for some reason, like, that's what
strong features.
Yeah. Yes. And that's what I was kind of like picturing Evelyn.
B. Arthur was a Marine.
She was a badass. Like,
she sure as fuck was.
She was a badass. But I kept picturing that, and I don't think that's what our author wanted us to picture. I think they wanted us to picture somebody more glamorous.
Right? Like Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah, or Audrey Hepburn, or something in that film star, golden age.
Right.
But that's not how I pictured Evelyn in my head.
Would you say this book is well written?
I'm not gonna say that she's a bad writer, because she's not. She's a good writer. I don't think this story was, to me, as well.
Right, you have context for her other books, so you know the difference.
Right, and Daisy Jones and the Six is like a really good book. Like, it's one that I actually put on our original pod list, and we're gonna have to add this to next season. I took it off because I feel like it's one that our listeners, not everyone who listens to us likes audiobooks. They want a physical book, and I feel like it's one that the physical book would be too complicated. Like, it just surprised me that it had such a following. I have to see it to make a judgment, I think. But for me, it wasn't it. Like, she's not a bad writer. I'm not going to say that. She's not a bad writer. We have read books that I've been like, this person is a bad writer.
She's a writer. I don't think she's a bad writer. I think there is times I feel like, I hope this makes sense. I feel like the language is simple. Does that make sense?
Yes. For as sophisticated as Evelyn is supposed to be, and as eloquent of a writer as Monique is supposed to be,
I feel like, okay, starting Evelyn with basic language when she's young, fine. But as she's maturing and growing and becoming this starlet and becoming this famous, well-spoken actress and having, I feel like her dynamic and her verbiage and her her mannerisms would change. And that would change, and you should see that change in the writing. Right?
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen.
But that's the problem that I have with this book in the changing the tenses. Because when we switch to, tenses.
Yeah, it is tenses, yeah.
When we switch to the parts where Evelyn is telling Monique the story, it's not her telling the story. It's not her having an oral history. It's not her being interviewed. It's the story.
Right.
Whereas, like, last week when we were talking to Chesney, one of the things we talked about was there was a clear differentiation between this is the memories that Kat's experiencing versus this is the present. And for me, you are doing a story where someone is being interviewed. So the tense should not change. This should be her reflecting on the past as opposed to this is being written in present tense. It really took me out of it. It bothered me.
And what would have really helped in the audiobook version was when she starts diving into the past and she's talking in past tense. She's recording this, right?
Right.
So there should have been some sort of static, just a faint little bit of static in the background, letting you know it's a recording also.
Well, I don't know that I would have needed it to be that specific, but what I needed was in the chapters where Monique is the speaker and Evelyn is talking to her.
Yeah.
Why is it the Monique's character putting on a voice for Evelyn?
I don't know.
It was a full cast, so why didn't you just have her spoiler alert, we are going to be covering Good Omens next month, and I'm listening to that right now, and I'm listening to the full cast.
So good. Evelyn, Good Omens is so good.
I'm listening to the full cast version, which was just released recently, which stars David Tennant and Michael Sheen, just like the Good Omens show. And when the narrator is talking and someone comes in and speaks, it switches to that character's voice. That's what I needed from this book.
Yeah.
You already have the full cast audio. And the way that Monique put on Evelyn's voice, it was so different than Evelyn's voice.
Right.
And vice versa. And that really, it just didn't work. It didn't work for me.
It didn't work. I get it.
And I promise you, and I know our listeners are probably saying, well, April doesn't like historical fiction. This has become a thing on this pod. I don't like historical fiction. Molly loves it. She's way more of an eclectic reader than I am. But the truth is that, and Molly can attest to this, that when I was listening to this, and I was probably maybe 3 or 4 chapters in, I actually texted Molly and said, this isn't so bad. This is not.
You enjoyed the book. It's not that you didn't enjoy the book, and I want that to be clear.
Yeah.
And we're going to come to that in here.
Right.
It's just and I want you guys to understand, when we're pulling these books apart, we're not tearing them apart to tear them apart.
Right.
I enjoyed this immensely.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this immensely. This is a book of, I will rate this high. I enjoyed it immensely. It hits my historical fiction heart real hard. It's great.
I thought it was full of a lot of cliches that bothered me.
But when we sit here and this is constructive criticism.
Yeah.
We are not sitting here and just destroying these books.
Right.
And I think sometimes people forget that.
Right.
So we're allowed our opinions.
Right.
Thank you, friends.
Right.
Next question.
And the good thing is I think what our listeners come for, at least if I'm a fan of our pod, not just as being on it. I like
it's an honest review, right?
I like that we have differing opinions, because I feel like even when you go back to take, for example, our Harry Potter episodes, there were fans of Harry Potter that were like, oh, you made some really good points.
Right. Right. So it's not, we're giving you different point of views. Mm-hmm. April has learned through her years of library of how to be a critical book reader and how to give a honest review.
Right.
I am looking at this as a writer, period.
Right.
And I am seeing spots where I would do things differently.
And where both of us are readers, we do come from those different point of views. You come from the writing perspective, and I come from the perspective of being a reader who reviews books. I mean, that's a big part of my job.
Exactly.
So, anyway, I'm sorry to derail us.
But, I liked it. I love it.
Let's go on to the next one.
Our second question. We're only 20 minutes in.
20 minutes in.
We're doing okay. We can see the parallels of this book in real life Golden Years Hollywood. Mm-hmm. What do you think of this?
So I actually had difficulty with the timeline for this book because Evelyn comes to Hollywood before the Golden Years of Hollywood. And at one point in the book, she mentions being, I think, 22 or 25. It was one of those two. Yeah. And I remember going, fuck, I feel like the story has been going on for a really long time.
Yeah.
She lives a lot of life between 19 and 22. Like, not the year 1922, but ages 19 and 22. She lives a lot of life in there.
She does.
And so, like, she's married twice and divorced twice within those years. So it's a lot. So she actually comes before the Golden Years of Hollywood, and then
she goes through it.
Is part of the Golden Age of Hollywood.
Right. She is one of the main actresses of the Golden Year in hers. So
I would have liked to see her reference more real.
Right.
Golden Age artist.
Right.
Because, and I know this is something that you didn't like in Addie LaRue. You didn't want her to reference Voltaire.
But I feel like this needed this. This needed this. There were a few I noticed. Like, she is very much hinting at Elizabeth Taylor in her life with Evelyn Hugo. There are so many parallels between
the marriages, but I don't know if the base story. Because the truth about Evelyn Hugo...
Well, there is rumors, and she's bi.
She's bi.
There is actual rumors, and I actually Googled this after reading the book because I had to do a deep dive because very well I can't. It's who I am. Mm-hmm. There were rumors that Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor were a thing for a little bit.
Well,
during that whole JFK thing.
See, I didn't know that. But the other reason why I had trouble with this timeline is because I'm a huge fan of Carrie Fisher. Star Wars is life-changing for me. Princess Leia has been a hero of mine since I was a kid. And Carrie Fisher married a man who was in the closet and then left her for a man. And she makes jokes about that, or made jokes about that, like, what does she know about men because she married a gay guy? And so that is where I kept going. I kept going to Carrie Fisher's family.
Right.
Her mom was a famous actress in the Golden Age of Hollywood. And
her mom's fantastic as well.
And they infamously had a divorce because Elizabeth Taylor stole her husband.
Yes.
So I kept wrapping it into that world, and that isn't the right world because Carrie Fisher was generation later. So I'm going to jump for the next celebrity I noticed them hinting at hard.
I'm going to jump towards the end of the book.
Okay.
There is this accident and the cab driver she requests a major favor from her to help him become a star. And when Evelyn Hugo is talking about the movie she got him into, she was referring to a Russian invasion of a small town in Colorado, and I instantly knew who she meant. It was Patrick Swayze and the movie Red Dawn.
Well, I've never seen Red Dawn, so I didn't know that, but I do know who Patrick Swayze was.
I can't believe you've never seen Red Dawn. It is terrible, and everybody should have it burned into their memories because it's that amazing.
Sorry.
It's okay, so Patrick Swayze is back from war, and he's visiting his dad, the local sheriff, and his little brother's a football star, and who's played by, I want to say it's one of the Estevez brothers. I think it's Emilio Estevez, and there it's 1984. This is okay. Oh yeah, I was right, Emilio Estevez. Yes, I was so right. So they're in this small town, and then paratroopers come in. Oh, Leah Thompson's also in it. It's Charlie Sheen, not Emilio Estevez. So, wrong brother. So so they're at the dance house. Oh, it's Korea that's invading. It's the new Red Dawn that's no, I'm mixing the two Red Dawns up.
Molly, this is the worst
synopsis ever. Okay, starting over. Whiteboard fixed. Okay, so Patrick Swayze's character is, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to do this right. Ignore the ADHD, Molly.
I mean, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't.
It matters to me now.
It doesn't have anything to do with the book.
It's Patrick Swayze. It leads back to Patrick Swayze. But the movie Evelyn describes that, and then the career she describes that this taxi cab driver has lines up perfectly with Patrick Swayze.
Except it wouldn't, because Patrick Swayze, how old was he in the 1980s?
I think in his 30s, late 20s.
Okay, well maybe then.
But did you catch any other celebrity hints?
I cannot remember his name. Oh
no.
There is a man, an actor from Golden Age of Hollywood actor, who lived with his roommate. And I cannot think of who it is, but he lived with a roommate his whole life. And, I mean, he was clearly gay.
Cary Grant?
Cary Grant! Thank you.
And Clark Gable. Him and Clark Gable lived together.
I didn't remember Clark Gable was a part of this, but Cary Grant had a roommate forever.
Yes.
And it a lot of people now are like, okay, so Cary Grant was gay.
Well, his roommate was Randolph Scott.
Okay, so not Clark
Gable. They were labeled the two handsome bachelors.
Yeah. So that was 100% what I thought of when it came to Harry. Mm-hmm. And really Evelyn herself, because she's bisexual. Although, can I just say, the scene in which Monique says, Evelyn, are you telling me that you want in this book for me to tell everyone that you're a lesbian? The moment, it's a moment. It is a moment.
Evelyn makes everything a moment, though. Let's not lie.
She sighs and says, have you not been listening to anything I've been telling you? I was married before. I am not a lesbian. I am bisexual. The way that she says that is a moment.
It's very much, get your shit together and pay attention to what I'm saying.
Right. And
it's a mother talking to a child, not a woman talking to an interviewer.
And it felt very much like B. Arthur. Like, I felt like that was a moment B. Arthur would have, like, you know. But I loved that scene, because later we learn that the fact that she is bisexual was a problem for the true love of her life.
Yes.
Which is I blanked her name, Cecilia St. James. Cecilia was a lesbian, and Evelyn was bisexual, and Evelyn was fine with men and women, like she was truly bisexual, but Cecilia had a big problem with the fact, you know what it was? It was Arizona and Callie and Mark.
Yes! That's exactly what I pictured! Okay.
And once again, our podcast has gone from books to grays.
Here's the thing. And this is actually a thing in the LGBTQ plus community. There are lesbians that don't date bisexuals, pansexuals, demisexuals, any girls that don't, there are lesbians that don't date outside of lesbians because they have issues with it, right?
Right.
That's a them thing and not a me judging thing. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
And it has to do with, you know, I've heard this said on TikTok, and if I can find it again, I'll say it again. It was a pan woman explaining that there's one thing that the male gender can give a bisexual woman that a lesbian cannot.
A penis?
A child.
Oh, okay. Well, that too.
You can buy a penis, right, in a store. Point. It comes in plastic and you can wash it, and, you know, all the things with those.
But, as opposed to a regular penis, which can't be washed.
I mean, it can be, but it's not detachable. You can't pick your size, your color, your shape, your texture. Like, there is a lot of things that you could buy in a store that isn't naturally grown on a man.
Fair point.
But it's more about, like, the genetic thing about having genetic children and that kind of thing.
But I mean,
and again, I'm not speaking for the lesbian community. I'm just stating information I have read and understood from others.
But that actually brings up a good point of something that happens in this book, because Evelyn marries I just blanked on his name. Oh my gosh. Harry Cameron, who is ultimately her best friend, and he is a gay man. And Evelyn learns pretty early that he's a gay man. He doesn't say the words "I'm gay." He says things like,
"I have a big secret," and
he doesn't actually even use the word. Yeah, and he says things like, "You're not my type," and things like that. And she kind of puts two and two together. Oh, he's gay. But Harry and Evelyn get married, and they're married to hide the fact that they are actually with other partners. So Evelyn's with Cecilia, and Harry is with Cecilia's late husband. And let me look at my notes so I can remember his name. You know what? I don't have his name in my notes, so I can't remember.
The football player?
John, who's a football player. And so Harry and John actually live in a house.
Oh, Mr. All-American, who's like the quarterback of the century.
Right. So Harry and John live in a house together, and Cecilia and Evelyn live in a house together. And in the newspapers, in the press, they're just like this really great, like, double dating couple. Actually, people
that love each other.
Right. Yeah. People are guessing that they're maybe swingers, which, I mean, I guess in some ways they are.
Technically they are.
They are swapping spouses. I mean, it's just not the way you think it is.
I mean, but then her and, you just said his name.
John?
No. Evelyn and her husband.
Harry.
Decide to have a child.
They decide to have a child. Right. And that was my point. Thank you for getting me back to it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Harry has always wanted to be a dad. Yeah. And, Evelyn can give him that, and he can give Evelyn that.
Right.
And they do it the old-fashioned way, which Cecilia doesn't love. That they have sex.
But, I mean, NDAs were
had sex with one other woman, so Evelyn's not the first woman that he slept with.
Right. But I mean, this was a time before NDAs, and fertility treatment and all that were kept private. Like,
well, NDAs existed because she has to sign one when she divorces Don.
Right, but it's like not talked about. She makes it seem like it's a hard thing back then. Right? Because
I don't know.
They refused to go to a doctor because they were afraid secrets are going to be spilled.
Yes, because it doesn't really matter I mean, you can sign an NDA all day long, but that doesn't mean you're going to keep it. Right?
Right.
You have a lot more money to make by telling the secret that Evelyn Hugo was going for fertility treatment.
Right. She was 38 when they got pregnant, right?
Yeah, something like that. Which to me, like, that had already been a whole lifetime because, man, this book really drags on.
I could not do a newborn right now. No, thank you.
No.
I am 38.
No. I mean, I had both my boys in my 30s. So I was 31 when James was born and 34 when Sam was born. And that's enough. Like my students' parents are my
if you're
age.
no judgment if you're having kids late in life.
No judgment.
Zero judgment.
But like,
zero judgment. I physically, Molly Biggs, cannot handle having a child at this age. If I have a child at this age, I am going to strangle Matthew Biggs. You will see me on the news, and the next podcast I will be on is a true crime podcast because I will be having a baby in jail.
I'm exhausted because I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. Like, it's a lot. Like, I'm old for that. But anyway,
I'm gonna have a teenager this month, dude. Think about that.
No, I can't.
Okay, let's go on to the third question, shall we?
Yeah.
Since this is actually a great conversation to lead into.
Yeah, but I feel like I know that we aren't like necessarily going through the question list, but we are having a good conversation. So that's great. At least we're on fucking topic this time.
No more inside jokes, you mean?
Shit. I feel like at this point people know what they're signed up for. Like, you know what you're getting into.
Right. And if you don't, why are you fucking here, man? Do you have a favorite of Evelyn's husbands?
Oh, 100% my favorite was Harry Cameron.
I liked Harry.
But I would
was
say
her best friend.
A close second would be Robert Jameson, although like
Celia St. James' brother. Yeah.
Like
actually he's my
what a good brother that you're like, yeah, sure, you can bang my sister and I'll be
Well,
married
he's
to you. It's
like,
fine.
you know what? I'm a whore. I know it.
Yeah.
I'm good with it.
Yeah.
I actually, he fixed. I like Harry, but I have issues with men who are alcoholics and ignore their children. So I'm gonna go with.
I have to defend him on this. I'm not saying it's okay to be an alcoholic and ignore your child. I'm not saying that. He actually was trying to be a good father still. He was still there for his daughter a great deal of the time. But he was grieving. The true love of his life died, and he was grieving him.
Go. You can have your grief, but you cannot ignore your kid and become an alcoholic and kill yourself drinking and driving.
Okay, so that he did do, but he didn't ignore their daughter, and I forgot her name. Let me look it up. I really should stop reading so many books in between.
But my favorite husband,
Collins.
My favorite husband is Robert, and I'm gonna say the reason my favorite husband is Robert is because he helped Collins heal. He helped Collins become, and I think and he accepted Evelyn as she was. He didn't ask anything from her.
Yeah.
He didn't, he honored his sister's wishes after his sister passes.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about him is that he stayed with her even after Cecilia died. They moved back to New York City together, and he's still married to Evelyn. He was married to Evelyn until his death.
Right. I don't know. I liked him the most.
I would say he's a close second for me. Like I said, I love that he, I really feel like he loved Evelyn, not in a romantic way. I think he loved her as like a companion, like,
Right.
And I think the reason he stayed with her even when his sister died is because at that point they were each other's companions.
Yeah.
They were both seniors at that point and they were each other's companions.
So I want to jump into a question I hand wrote before we move on.
Okay.
Was there any of, there was a lot of death in this book too, because she out-aged everybody. Cecilia dies. Collins dies.
Of emphysema, and by the way, that gutted me.
God, it's hard. Her daughter dies of breast cancer. Her Henry dies in the car accident.
John dies.
John dies
of a heart attack.
Like
the All-American quarterback.
Was there any of those deaths that hurt you the most? Like, as like caring for Evelyn as a character, do you think
Harry dying is the one that got me? Of course, Cecilia.
Cecilia was the one that bothered me the most.
Cecilia, yeah, sure, definitely. That is obviously the grieving point because that is the true love of her life. I wasn't as attached to Cecilia. I was attached to Harry, and here's why. I really just had an issue with how Cecilia treated Evelyn. I'm not saying Evelyn was not to blame for some of their relationship problems.
Harry accepted her as is.
Cecilia never did. Well, in the end she did. But I think she was so set on being proud of who she was that she wasn't okay with Evelyn.
Evelyn as is.
Right.
Collins, the startling news that her daughter was dead and that outliving a child is one of the scariest things I think would ever happen to me as a parent.
Right.
And for those who have lost children before, like they've gone, I can't imagine the devastation.
Right.
Like it is a thing you made.
Right.
A tiny human that's grown into the world, and
Collins
dying had to have changed Evelyn.
Right.
It had to have molded her into a different. And I think that's why she stopped giving a fuck. You know what I mean?
Well,
I came to this conclusion to tell Monique everything.
Well, I don't think it was just Collins dying. Collins knew the truth about her. She told Collins who she was. She told Collins she was bisexual, that she was in love with Cecilia. They moved overseas.
To Spain.
Yeah. I think what it came down to is that, number one, she wanted to tell Monique the secret, which I know we're going to talk about that in a minute, so I'm not going to divulge that yet. But I think she also wanted to tell the world about Cecilia.
Yeah.
And she had an excuse to do it because we find out, spoiler alert, that Evelyn is dying.
Right.
She has
She also has breast
stage 4 breast
cancer.
cancer. So I think it was time for her to say, I want to tell the world who Cecilia was to me. Right. And I think that was a story that only she could tell. Literally nobody else was alive to tell that story.
Right. Let's actually get into that question.
Sure.
And then we can jump back in.
Sure.
There is a bombshell at the end of Evelyn's story that changes the way Monique views her.
Yeah.
What did you think of this? How would...
So I have to tell you what I was doing when I was reading this. So I was listening to the audiobook and I was weeding in my library. So for those of you who are not in the library world, weeding is basically what it sounds like. Like when you weed your garden, you get rid of the bad parts of your garden and you put in new parts of your garden. So weeding in the library is getting rid of old crappy books. I happened to be weeding in the classics section, which was just interesting because Little Women was in the classics section. And I literally dropped the book and went, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
It was her dad.
And which I was devastated for Monique.
I was too.
Devastated for her.
But here's the thing. I think it was also really fucking selfish of Evelyn Hugo.
Oh, 1,000%.
She said,
"What brilliant writing to fuck with us, man!"
But Evelyn
brilliant twist.
So if you haven't read this, and here's your twist for you.
Brilliant.
The accident that Harry dies in, the car accident, he is driving drunk. There is a man in the car with him.
Man of color.
A man who's a person of color, a man of color. And he is in the car with him. And because he's still, Harry's alive, Evelyn basically uses the taxi driver to pull Harry out of the car and move the now dead man next to him in the driver's seat. Monique grew up the whole time, all her life, thinking that her dad died in a car accident, that he was the one that was drunk.
At fault for, yeah.
And it wasn't him. Evelyn says that she wanted to talk to Monique about this because she felt Monique deserved the whole story about her dad. That she deserved to know that her dad was actually a gay man, that he was with her mom because that was the quote unquote right thing to do. It was 100% selfish. That was the one thing that Evelyn felt guilty about in her life. So she decided to divulge that information.
She needed to clear her conscience. She was literally confessing. And she felt a multi-million-dollar deal would make up for it.
It didn't change how Monique felt about... Like, she didn't need to know that her dad was gay. Like, no. I'm not saying that that's a secret he should have taken to his grave. I think if you are LGBTQ, you should be able to be who you are. I don't think you should even have to come out. Like, that's just who you are. Why do you have to come out? Like,
why do we have to explain ourselves?
Right.
Why do you... I owe you no explanation. I love you. I owe you no explanation.
But it wasn't her job to tell Monique that.
It was his story and his journey.
And he died, so that would have been the end of it.
So
it explained why she wanted Monique, but I actually think the real reason why she wanted Monique was not because of that. I think it had everything to do with the fact that Monique in her career, before she got with the magazine that she's now working for, before she got with that magazine, she wrote an article about Death with Dignity, which is assisted suicide.
Yep.
However you want to call it.
And she thought Evelyn thought Monique would
understand her perspective
and want to hold her hand
because Evelyn kills herself at the end.
Right. Do you think Monique will ever tell her mom?
Well, at the end of the book, she says that maybe she will someday, but I don't think she will.
I think she's going to omit it from the story.
As hurt as she would. As hurt as she was by that, would you really want to hurt your mom? That, by the way, your husband didn't actually want to do
because
with you.
Her mother has
because he felt he had to do that. No.
So there are two very distinct journeys here.
Mm-hmm.
Evelyn, as she's telling the full truth. Mm-hmm. And Monique, as she's growing and changing from her time with Evelyn.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about these choices from the author?
I actually don't think anybody grew or changed.
Monique did. She learned that she didn't want to be with her husband. She learned about who she really was. She learned what she really wanted in life.
All right, those are fair points.
She learned to be honest.
Those are fair points. I concede the point that Monique changed. Evelyn did not change. Evelyn was who she was from the time, like I said at the beginning, by the time she knocked on Ernie Diaz's door, yeah.
No.
I know this isn't a question there, but in your list, but I have a question for you because
Sure.
I think we need to talk about this. So one of the things about Evelyn that is downplayed a lot is that she's a woman of color. So she's a Cuban American,
which they never talk about.
Right. They do not. Basically, Hollywood whitewashed her, right?
For a fact.
So they dyed her hair blonde and basically told her, "You're Italian. Like, you can pass for Italian."
And I bet
that
you
was
dollars to
okay.
donuts they did that a lot.
They definitely did. And I cannot think of her last name, but her first name is Sofia something or other. She was in the second Grumpy Old Men movie.
The one that used to be in all the old Elvis movies. I know exactly what you're talking about.
She is a total bombshell, and she was a hot Italian woman, and that is what I kept picturing, like they did to Evelyn. Like, we're gonna just make you look like her.
You're talking about Sofia Loren.
Yes, Sofia Loren.
She was in a bunch of Elvis movies, and she's
stunning. By the way,
okay. This says she's Italian and was born in Italy.
Yes, she was. But by the way, side note, my grandfather, Grandpa Fred, he was that was his woman. That was his woman.
Oh, Sofia Loren?
Yeah. He loved her. And I always thought it was so funny. But anyway, like, that's what they did to her. They whitewashed her. She wasn't allowed to be a Latina woman.
Right.
She was supposed to be white because she wouldn't have been cast. And I thought that was really interesting because, I mean, it's definitely true to the time, right? Women of color.
I mean, hell, we were seeing it in the 70s and 80s.
Right. I mean, it's still today. I mean, just a few years ago, Hollywood So White was like a hashtag, right? Hashtag Hollywood So White or Oscar So White.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really
whitewashed Oscars or something of that nature. Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting that she brought that element in.
I wish it would have been talked about more. It was I
think she didn't need both. She didn't need the taboo woman in Hollywood who was a woman of color, and she didn't need the taboo woman in Hollywood who was LGBTQ. Like, she did both. She did both.
She did have, moments where we bounced back to it. Like when the housekeeper spoke in Spanish in front of her, and then she checked her and spoke in Spanish to her again. But she felt
and then when
awkward.
They lived in Spain, she spoke Spanish. Yeah.
So we've talked about unreliable narrators before on the pod. Is Evelyn a reliable narrator?
No, she isn't. And I think that's the point of this story, right? She's never told her story before. She tells Monique she's going to tell her the whole story, and she does tell her the whole story. But she leaves out a huge chunk, which is that she plans to kill herself when this is all over.
Yes. I wonder if Monique will put, I mean, obviously the suicide's going to be a big thing.
Yeah,
right?
But
I wonder if she'll put it in the book.
She would not, because the official story was that it was an accidental overdose, right? There were people supposing that maybe she just mixed up her medication. She's an old lady. She got a lot of medication, and she was breast cancer, and she lived alone, and blah, blah, blah. And so that'll probably be what's in the book.
There is one Evelyn quote from Monique that I thought was interesting when we were talking about Monique's point of view changing of Evelyn. And it goes, "I hate Evelyn, but I think I like her very much."
Yeah.
What do you think about this quote?
I feel like there are people in my life like that. Kind of you right now, since you made me read so much damn historical fiction.
I knew it was going to be me.
It isn't you, though. It isn't you, though. There are people in your lives that you
love, frenemies.
No, I actually take it to family. There are people in my family that I really want to hate, but I actually really love them.
Yeah, and it hurts.
I think that's different from Monique, because I think what it comes down to for her is respect. Like, she respects the fact that Evelyn is 100% herself the whole time.
Well, and we see little things about Evelyn that make you respect her. The way she treats her staff, the way she treated Monique, she was always honest with Monique. She granted her staff, she gave her the house in Spain. Then she sent her on a paid vacation. She was Like,
yeah, but she did all that so that she could kill herself.
right. But
You
I mean,
wanna-
she
you
didn't
wanna
have to
know
give her the house in Spain.
the only thing that really I truly respected about Evelyn, and I hate saying this because I'm going to preface it with this. I don't want anyone to ever feel like they cannot be who they are. You are a human, be who you
Yes.
are, be who you were created to be. But the thing I respected about Evelyn is that she knew that she could do more good for the LGBTQ community is if she stayed in the closet and filtered money to them.
Yes.
I hate that she couldn't be herself. I hate she
But-
couldn't be honest about who she was until she was literally making
What a
a
true
deathbed
statement.
confession.
What a
But-
true statement.
But she could do that.
Because
Yeah.
think about that. Think about somebody major. Like, let's take Leonardo DiCaprio for sake.
Mhm.
He's a well-known bachelor. There's
Right.
always been rumors about his sexuality.
I've never heard them. He just seems to bang a lot of hot models who are way too young for him.
If he came out as gay,
Mhm.
instead of him doing all this publicity and all this work to make the gay, what they call the gay agenda, right,
Mhm.
more predominant and promote, shelters for kids, the stories wouldn't be about him. They would be about him and not what he's trying to promote.
And that's exactly what she was doing. She didn't want the story to be about. Yeah, she didn't want the story. Like, there was literally a scene in which there were protests, Stonewall protests.
Right, Stonewall.
And should we go down there and be part of that? No, because then the story will be us and not them.
Right.
And it needs to be about them, gay men and what they're doing.
And man, did they do everything they could to help.
Yeah, they did. And I think today is different. I do feel like we have more representation of people who are LGBTQ in Hollywood. I don't think everyone is out who's there.
Oh, no, absolutely not. I have a theory about Alan Tudyk and Nathan Fillion, but that's for another time.
I think that's just a fantasy you want to have.
No, good God, no. I don't like that. No, that's not it. It's just their behaviors and, like, they purposely pull each other into projects that the other has no business being in. Have you seen Resident Alien?
Yes! And he's the octopus. I freaking love it.
Right.
Right. Well, I don't know. I think that we have more representation today. I think people are less afraid to be who they are. We have musicians who are out. We have athletes who are out.
Yes.
I think we're entering a world in which people's sexuality is no longer the most interesting thing about them. And it shouldn't be.
No.
It's like that episode of Grey's Anatomy where Lexi comes up with 5 things that are interesting about her. And she's like, these aren't the interesting things about me. These are the interesting things. And that's what I want for people who are LGBTQ. I want the interesting thing about them to not be their sexuality.
Right. Because it's not a breaking point of who you are as a person.
Right.
Being bi does not make your personality.
Right.
What makes your personality is the books you read, the TV you like, your favorite color, right?
Like, I'm not going to judge you for being gay. I'm going to be judging you because your favorite book is 50 Shades of Grey.
So, to wrap up.
Just kidding. Zero judgment on books here, although I do judge you for that one.
A little bit.
A little bit.
What the fuck is that? Anyways, I gotta fly away. Ignore me, gang. There was a movie.
So well.
I know. The ADHD just gets them. I mean, I had a lot going on today. Like,
I know.
We're filming later.
It's fine.
There was a movie in the works for the book with Freeform, but then they dropped it. Could you still see this getting picked up?
Freeform was gonna do it, like the thing that used to be ABC Family.
Yeah.
They were gonna do it. It would have been.
Yeah, and Hulu had it. I'll put the link in our notes.
Okay, so I'm sorry. What was your question? I was too distracted by Freeform.
You're like, really? Freeform?
Like the people who did Pretty Little Liars? Like, what the fuck?
Really? Yes. It was going to be a movie, and it got dropped. Like, the contracts didn't get finished. It was a whole miscommunication trope.
In real life, IRL.
In real life, IRL. Do you see it getting picked up eventually for a movie or a show?
It's so wildly popular that I can't see that it won't. But it's not one I will see.
I will. I would prefer it to be a TV show.
Molly, you want every book to be a TV show just so that they can not cut parts of it out.
But you also realize that I don't have pictures in my brain. I have words. Mm-hmm. So to have it visualized is important for me because I don't get to visualize in my dome.
I'm not sure how well this one would work on film. I mean, it's really popular, so it'll probably get picked up.
I feel like...
And also, Hollywood really likes tooting their own horn, and it's about Hollywood.
But the problem with this is there's so much symbolism to actors that have gone by. Mm-hmm. I feel like when that documentary about Michael Jackson came out and his estate sued, I think you're going to see a lot of estates getting really pissed that their likeness is being used without their permission or in
I don't think you're right about that, because I think the people who are that might be referenced in there will not want to say a damn thing. It'll be like The Help. Nobody wants to admit that they are the person being referenced.
Right. Okay, final thoughts. What did you rate it on Goodread?
Oh, I'll look it up. But final thoughts. I think I don't know, Molly. What are your final thoughts? Oh my gosh, why won't my computer open Goodreads? What the hell? I
enjoyed the book. It felt long for as it, I don't want to call it simple, as I guess that's the only word I have right now. It as simple as the idea of this book. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And if you're breaking down the nuts and bolts of this story, it feels longer than it needs to be.
It's really too long. It
feels really long. Mm-hmm. We didn't talk about this much. Evelyn tricking the rock star into marrying her was hilarious.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that immensely.
I thought this book was really just full of a lot of cliches and bad tropes. And I'm not saying that her writing was bad, because I don't think she's a bad writer, but I rated it a 2 on Goodreads. It looks like I actually officially gave it, it does look like I gave it a 2, a full 2, not at 1.5. But I actually said, besides having a decent plot twist, this book is bland, predictable, and cliche.
Okay.
And I'm going to stand by that because I honestly just don't understand why so many people liked it. To me, it just wasn't it. I did think, I would say the most interesting part of this book was that Don Adler was an abusive husband and beat her. I thought that was really interesting that she included that.
I think it felt very realistic for the times. I wasn't surprised at all. The way she talked about him and the way he was very self-centered, I knew he was
It was realistic abusive. For the times, but I didn't think it would be included.
Made me think of the stories you hear about Lucille Ball and her
Desi
husband
Arnaz.
back then.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't even do this episode, and
I know.
I feel like
oh yeah,
a lot of the book made me want to ring a bell.
Out of the 3 historical fictions we've done, this is my favorite. I haven't even finished Lost Apothecary, but it's a bit much right now.
Have fun. I have finished it, and I want to throw that book in the fucking Thames. All right, you want to talk about what we're doing next week?
Yeah.
All right, so I fucked up, guys. I fucked up last week and said that we were doing Hunger Games this week, but we're not. I fucked up. So it was Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So next week is the Hunger Games series. Here's my box set of my hardbacks editions of Hunger Games.
I think Piper
has
them.
I also have The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes in hardback. And fun fact about that episode, you guys, for the first time ever, we recorded out of order because Molly didn't have her shit together.
Hi, I am Molly Biggs. I never have my shit together. Where have you been?
And I had to go somewhere the week we needed to film the Hunger Games. So we filmed it out of order, but it's fine. It should be great. And then we're going to wrap out the month with this fucking book. The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner.
The book's pretty.
Gorgeous cover. I love this cover. Of course,
I love the map inside too. Which I
yes.
thought was
So if
pretty.
you haven't seen, if you listen to this one, which I think you did too, I listened.
I'm
to
working
this one.
on it now.
Yeah. So
I'm not a fan. I'll talk about it on the pod.
It's a full cast audiobook, and it does have a beautiful map in the physical book. So definitely take a look at that. I love a good map.
This book also has reader's guide. It has questions. And it has recipes.
It's also popular on the socials, and so that's what we're doing. And then that's how we're gonna wrap out the month. But then, guys,
the one,
the only. Nurse Katie.
Nurse Katie
is coming back the first week in April. We will be dropping an episode in which we will discuss John Green's brilliant book, The Fault in Our Stars.
Fuck that book. It's going to hurt my heart.
I was laying in bed beside Tom reading it, literally sobbing. And so he was asleep and woke up and was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Not okay."
Not okay.
But we're going to discuss that one with Nurse Katie. And we do have another guest coming up in April. My husband, our editor, Tom, will be coming up as well. He is going to host the episode in which it will be our 42nd episode, and we will discuss The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you know, you know. 42. If you know, you know. And so that's it. That's what's coming up. Follow us on social media for more things that are coming up.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah, sounds good. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on Book Besties. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The views discussed here are those of Molly and April, not those of anybody else. Today's book was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Your book besties are Molly Biggs and April Watkins. Editing by Thomas Watkins, and music is Sleep Sweetly by Brigida. Don't forget to follow Book Besties on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. If you'd like to contact the Book Besties, please email us at bookbestiespod@gmail.com.